or tomorrow will likely record an all-time high number of new COVID cases in one day. The previous high was 77,000 new cases in a day. That was back in July. As of right now, the data people at Johns Hopkins have recorded nearly 72,000 new infections today. Today is the fourth highest toll, but that number will almost certainly grow throughout the evening. Yesterday, there were more than 71,000 new cases, and the trend line is rising. And that trend line is followed by increased hospitalizations, of course, and then, sadly, increased deaths. We saw the same thing this summer, and it is happening again. It's grim stuff. The president talked about it today.
We're rounding the corner beautifully. We're going to quickly end this pandemic, this horrible plague that came in from China.
That's how he talks about it. We're rounding the corner beautifully, he said. That would be accurate if he means that around the corner there was a cliff or a fast-moving truck heading toward us. We're on the cusp of breaking the record for cases in a single day. The president was speaking at the giant Florida retirement community, The Villages, and here's the president speaking to tens of millions of Americans at last night's debate.
It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
He's now said that, or words to that effect, dozens of times since the pandemic arrived. This is nothing new. He's been saying it from the very beginning of the pandemic. It's going to magically disappear, gone by Easter. He said it knowing it wasn't true then, knowing how deadly the virus was. He admitted as much to Bob Woodward back in early February, then told Woodward in March that he always preferred to, play the pandemic down. Well, keeping him honest, the pandemic doesn't care about the president's preferences. And even as we speak, the president is at another one of his potential super spreader events, this one in Pensacola, Florida, where, as usual, the people behind him will be told to wear masks for the cameras, but virtually no one else will be doing that. Why does it matter? Well, just today, researchers at the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation published a new study in the journal Nature Medicine. It says 100,000 lives could be saved in this country by February 28th if mask wearing became widespread across the country. Now, right now, only about 49% of Americans wear masks regularly, which is pretty stunning. If it was 95% of us, 100,000 people's lives could be saved by the end of February. Now, scientifically, it's that simple. But the president has single-handedly made it impossibly complex. He's made mask wearing political, and he's shown in his own behavior that it's perfectly acceptable to endanger other people by not wearing a mask. But in reality, it is that simple. If virtually everyone wears a mask in this country, 100,000 more people will survive this pandemic by the end of February. They won't die. Now, even with near universal mask wearing, the study's death figure is still heartbreaking, 381,000 people. But it could be more than 500,000 if we just keep doing what we're doing. With 49% of the country wearing masks, we will see nearly 400,000 people dead, according to the latest projection, by the end of February. So given how simple the life-saving answer is, given that it literally costs next to nothing, other than saying the right words and modeling the right behavior, what do you suppose the president is doing about it?
This is Jeff Mason. He's got a mask on that's the largest mask I think I've ever seen. So I don't know if you can hear him.
That's the president today mocking a reporter, Jeff Mason, for wearing a mask indoors in the Oval Office. Not a big space, surrounded by people not wearing masks, all of whom work for the president. And they all know the president doesn't like mask wearing. Not wearing a mask himself, and he makes fun of someone who is. If he were the CEO of a public company, mocking someone in the company for wearing a mask, pressuring everyone around him not to wear one, he would be removed as CEO. There would be lawsuits by employees, HR complaints. He wouldn't last long at all as CEO. But this president, he isn't a CEO. I mean, I know he has a company or had a company, but he's not really a CEO. He's the president, and he is Donald Trump. If only he would wear a mask and encourage all of us to wear them as well. This is a president who said last night, if only briefly, before quickly shifting the blame elsewhere, that yes, he does take responsibility for how this country has handled the pandemic. Listen.
And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that he came here either. It's China's fault.
Okay, so his moment of accountability and self-awareness had the lifespan of a fruit fly last night. I take full responsibility. course, it's China's fault. That's leadership 101. But just for argument's sake, imagine if he said exactly the same thing last night, merely adding a few words. What if he said, I take responsibility, but it's China's fault, but now that the virus is here, the simplest, cheapest, and most effective way of defeating it is to put on a mask. And that's what I'm going to do. But of course, he didn't do that because it seems he simply cannot. And today, he made fun of a reporter for wearing a mask. But imagine if the president had said that. Imagine if he decided to say that today, because his supporters listen to him. Many of them would listen to him. And the power of him setting the wrong example, that is real. And it's costing real lives. It will cost 100,000 lives by the end of February. South Dakota's governor, Kristi Noem, is one of his staunchest supporters, and like him, she too doesn't want to wear a mask. Here's what she said in a recent op-ed. If folks want to wear a mask, they should be free to do so. Similarly, those who don't want to wear a mask shouldn't be shamed into wearing one, and government should not mandate it. South Dakota is now second only to North Dakota in cases per 100,000, and today set a new record for daily cases with the positivity rate now approaching 22%. Meantime, in North Dakota, contact tracing is so overburdened by all the new cases, officials are asking the infected to do it themselves. Let that sink in a moment. You're infected with COVID. Hey, can you do us a solid and trace all the people you came in contact with and call them up and, in between your coughing? All these months into a pandemic, and contact tracing still, it varies state by state. Yeah, some states have devoted resources to it, some haven't. There's no coordinated federal effort at all. A strong message on mask wearing from the president would lighten the load on those contact tracers by lowering the case count. It would save 100,000 lives. Not only can the president not bring himself to do that simple thing, he still can't even tell the truth about where we stand right now.
We're entering the final turn and approaching the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the way I look at it.
He keeps using that phrase. That was a phrase that some generals and others used to describe the Vietnam War in the late 60s. They did it. I think it was 1968, people started talking about, oh yeah, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. It turned out to be a very long and very deadly tunnel. Again, the virus clearly does not care what the president says. It doesn't care that we're all tired of this. It's spreading now at a rate not seen since July, heading toward a third peak higher than the first two. That is what is in this tunnel that we are in right now. By the end of the weekend, 225,000 Americans will have died in this country in this pandemic. By the end of February, according to the new IHME study, 381,000 Americans will be dead. 150,000 more Americans will die in the span of 3 more months. Almost as many as have already died. That's how bad it's going to be the next 3 months. And that is assuming that we all start wearing masks. If we don't, if states begin shutting down when death rates exceed a certain level, that number climbs to more than 511,000. If states continue removing social distancing mandates, the new IHME study projects about 1 million people will be dead of COVID by February 28th. That's not rounding the corner, no matter how you describe it.